Okay, well, here's a story I'm going to tell you. This is from when I was a young guy, back in the mid 1980s. As I told you before in other videos, the nearest town to my hometown of Perth, Ontario, Canada, is a town called Smiths Falls, which is 12 miles from Perth. Anyway, when I was young, I had a female friend. It was strictly a platonic relationship. There's my cat there. But when you're a young guy, that's my Rocky. But when you're a young guy, it's always in the back of your mind. Something may happen here, even though we wouldn't have been really cut out to be a couple or anything. I had the idea maybe something, you never know. Anyway, she was a pretty girl, and you just never know. So anyway, there's Rocky. He's photobombing the story here. What had happened was this. I had some business in Smiths Falls on a Saturday. I had an account at the credit union in Smiths Falls, and there was a wrecking yard I used to go to in Smiths Falls for car parts because I always had some old car. There was another wrecking yard in Jasper, which was a little village about 10 miles south of Smiths Falls, where I also used to buy parts for cars. And, back in the 80s, I drove a lot of stuff from the 40s and 50s and 60s. And you just nurse it along. You buy an old car up for a couple $100 and you just nurse it along. So, anyway, what had happened was I stopped to see my friend, my female friend. I won't say her name here, but stopped to see her before I went to Smiths Falls to see if she wanted to come for the ride. And, of course, she did. So she gets into the old car with me, and we head to Smiths Falls, and I take care of my business that I have in Smiths Falls. I can't remember now what I was doing there, but I had some specific reason why I was going. After we took care of our business, we're driving through Smiths Falls, and we're passing a motel. The motel was called the Lock View Motel. I remember that because Smiths Falls is actually on the Rideau Canal, and so there's locks there for boats to go through, and stuff. And this motel wasn't too far from where the locks were anyway for the boats, and it was called the Lock View Motel because obviously there was a view of the locks from the motel. It was a flea bag of a place, though. It was an old, neglected, rundown motel. Here we go. Okay, Rocky. There we go. Quite a cat. Anyway, he's a celebrity. He is now. You guys have made him a celebrity. You have. Anyway, my friend, she points. She says, "Turn here." Of course, I thought, oh boy, she wants me to take her to the motel. That can only mean one thing. Being a young guy, of course, that's where my mind automatically went. So I cranked the big old steering wheel around, and in we went. Anyway, right into the parking lot of the motel. Now, I did notice there were a bunch of Ontario Hydro trucks parked at the motel. But that's not unusual because, oftentimes work crews stay up motels when they're in an area doing some work and so on. And Ontario Hydro was our power company for the province of Ontario. If you weren't on the municipal power in a municipality, then if you're in the country or in a town that didn't have its own public utility, then you would buy your hydro from Ontario Hydro. Anyway, so these trucks were there anyway. It's now called Hydro One. That corporation that provides power is now called Hydro One. Anyway, it's an omnipotent power, I'll tell you. It's a scary thing. But anyway, there were a bunch of trucks parked there. This factors into the story. Anyway, we go in there. We get out of the car. Of course, she's walking towards the motel office. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, we got to go in there to get the room, So anyway, this is progress, We're getting, okay, Rocky, get off me. I love you, but holy smokes. Pardon me. Anyway, so I follow her, And we go in there to the office, and of course there's nobody at the front desk, so she just goes right on past the front desk, and she opens the door, and she goes into the back. Now, I thought that was pretty forward of her, because that was like the manager's residence. She just walked into somebody's house. I didn't know what to make of that. But I followed her, because when you're young, you follow the you-know-what. I figured that's the you-know-what right there. I'm following that. Wherever that goes, I'm going with it. Not letting this one out of my sight, So in I go behind her. I was a young guy, what could I say? So I go in behind her. Any pure thoughts I had ever had in my life were gone at that moment. I was up to no good. I go in there behind her anyway, and it turns out this is what had happened, and this is the twist to the story. It turns out it's not what you're probably thinking it was, and it's not what I was thinking and hoping it was. It turns out this girl's mother was squatting at the motel. In fact, the motel was condemned. I didn't realize that when we went there, but it was. It was actually a condemned building. Somebody had bought the property and was going to tear it down. And so, anyway, in the kitchen of the manager's residence was my friend's mother, sitting at a table, and all around the table there was a crew of tree cutters, guys that work for Ontario Hydro, clearing brush and trees away from power lines and stuff, keeping the area clear, for safety reasons and for accessibility to work on things and so on. And that's why there were all the hydro trucks. That's why all the hydro trucks were sitting around out there anyway. And this girl's mother was squatting in there, and apparently the police had been around, and they had warned her. They'd said, you need to leave. You're breaking the law by being here. And the owner of the motel had been around too, the guy who had bought the property and wanted to tear it down, and he was hopping mad, and he basically said, I'll tear the place down around your ears. If you don't leave, I'll just tear it down with you in it. And she basically told him that that's exactly what he would have to do. So, anyway, he was in the process of trying to force her out. And she was squatting in there. And she was fairly well intoxicated. It was a drinking party, and so were all the men that were around this table. They were all drunk. And she was sitting there cackling. Just laughing. She had this cackling laugh. And she'd go, ah! She'd slap the table with her hand. And she'd be looking at these guys. She'd say, you're all a bunch of sluts. Just a bunch of dirty sluts. This is what was going on anyway. I think my friend was kind of embarrassed by the whole thing. And I can't say I blame her. I would be too. I don't think she really expected to find her mother in that state, although it probably wasn't an unusual thing, but maybe she had hoped that it wouldn't be. And it was early in the morning, too. It wasn't like it was later in the day, but anyway, they were well started. The party was on at that point. Anyway, I sat there for about an hour, and finally I took my friend aside, and I said, I can't take any more of this. Can we go? And so we did. We left anyway. But that's the story of the one time that I took a girl to a motel. There you go. So that was it. That's the one time I got to take a girl to a motel. It didn't turn out like I had wanted it to, but it gave me a really good story to tell, so it's all right. Anyway, there you go. Hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope you're having a good day.